This is Radio Moscow, and here is the news. First, the headline. The Soviet Union and Austria have jointly called for the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from occupied Arab territories and have pointed to the need to resolve the crisis in Vietnam on the basis of the Geneva Agreement. Another American serviceman has spoken on Moscow television denouncing United States aggression in Vietnam. And the Presidium of the Czechoslovak National Assembly is being convened in Prague on Tuesday. Those are the headlines. Now here's the news in full. The Soviet Union and Austria have called for the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from occupied Arab territory and have stressed the urgent need for a settlement in Vietnam based on the Geneva Agreements. They have done so in a communique on the results of the talks held in Moscow between the Austrian Foreign Minister Dr. Kurt Waldheim and his Soviet colleague Mr. Andrei Gromyko. Both sides expressed satisfaction at the progress made towards concluding a treaty to prevent the further spread of nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union and Austria have also supported the idea of a general European conference and have said that preparations for it should begin at once. A Soviet government statement issued in Moscow contains the warning that Israeli's actions cannot remain unpunished. The statement, which has been submitted to the United Nations as an official document, was made in connection with Thursday's Israeli attack on Jordan. The Soviet Union says its assistance to the victims of aggression will continue. The Arab countries are shortly to convene a summit conference. 8 countries have already signified their willingness to take part. They are the United Arab Republic, Libya, Kuwait, Jordan, the Sudan, Morocco, the Yemen, and the People's Republic of the Southern Yemen. The Arab capitals are in contact about the conference. A consultative meeting of international and national organizations working to halt the American war in Vietnam has begun in Stockholm. The chairman of the organizing committee, Mr. Bertil Svanström, says 150 delegates from 40 countries have already arrived. The meeting is to discuss measures to stop American aggression. The North Vietnamese press has published a communique from the command of the Liberation Army in the south about the results of 45 days of offensive operations. During this period, the Liberation Forces attacked more than 30 cities, 20 airfields, and 10 big American rear bases. According to incomplete figures, more than 150,000 enemy soldiers were put out of action, among them 45,000 Americans. The communique says the Liberation Forces are continuing vigorous operations and are retaining the initiative. Another American serviceman has denounced the United States aggression in Vietnam.
It's mailbag time, and here is Joe Adamo to answer your questions. The first letter is from White Man of 1380 Tulare Way, Upton, California. What is the average income per family?
You see, when speaking of living standards, very often people ask, how much do you earn a month? I do not believe in gauging living standards by monetary incomes alone, because that is not fair. And here is why. You see, if I were to tell you, say, that an average bus driver in Moscow earns, say, $200 a month or more, that would not tell you a complete picture. Why? Because actually, his real income, so to say, his living standard is much higher than it actually would be on $200, say, in your country. For the very simple reason that he pays something like $15 a month for rent, that is for a bedroom, a living room, or 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen, $15 a month. He pays only 16 or 17 cents a month for gas per person. He enjoys free medical aid, free education for his children, all the way up to university and teaching. He does not contribute anything towards his pension. His maximum income tax is 13% a month. He does not pay anything at all for the construction of the house in which he lives. In other words, the house is put up free of charge. Government pays for it. Subway fares are only 5 cents in this country. Moving the maximum price is about 50 cents. And a lot of other things, books and people, many things that people, I don't see anything cheaper in this country. There are things actually which are more expensive in the Soviet Union than they are in some of the Western countries. But what I'm driving at is that you cannot go by the monetary wage or income alone. You have to take all these things into consideration. And when you do that, you realize that the actual gap between the living standards, say, of the average worker in the Soviet Union today and that in some of the Western countries is not as big as one might think. What is typical of the living standard in the Soviet Union today is that it is steadily going up from year to year.
What is the lawmaking body in the Soviet Union?
The lawmaking body in the Soviet Union is the Soviet Parliament, called the Supreme Soviet. And it is Parliament that has the right to initiate legislation. The Council of Ministers can initiate legislation, and rank and file deputies too. Well, there are other bodies such as the Supreme Court. It too has the right to initiate legislation in our country. Laws are considered about voted if they are passed by both the houses of Parliament by majority vote in each. In this connection, I would like to add that most of the major laws in the Soviet Union get a very wide discussion both in the press, over the radio, and on TV, which has been the practice of late years, to give a public airing to all the major laws before they are passed, so that all the pros and cons and various suggestions can be heard.
Can any Russian citizen run for public office?
Well, if you want to run for a deputy to our parliament, you have to be 23. If you want to run for deputy to the parliament of a union republic, you have to be 21, and you have to be 18 to be elected to the local Soviet or council. And that is irrespective of your race or nationality, irrespective of sex, religion, education, the place where you live, your origin, the property status, or past activity. Of course, there is an exception for those who have been declared, unsound of mind by law. Otherwise, anybody can run for public office. But you must keep in mind the fact that you cannot sort of put your own name up for this or that office. You have to be nominated by some public organization, either by the trade unions or the Communist Party or a cooperative association, a youth organization, or a cultural society, who then will your name be registered in the list of candidates.
Edward Chorsinov of 1011 Hamilton Street, New Westminster, British Columbia, writes, I'd like a list of languages spoken in the U.S.
I'm afraid that's impossible because there are over 100. Of course, the most widespread, widely spoken language is Russian. Over 100 million people speak Russian. That's their native tongue, because Russian also acts as a go-between languages between the various nationalities of the Soviet Union. There are 40 million Ukrainians, about 6 million Uzbeks, 5 million Tartars, and so on, all the way down to some nationalities which number only a few thousand, or sometimes even a few hundred.
Michael Hackshaw of 89 Rumi Drive, Rochester, New York, asks, what is the basic use of Siberia today? Every time I hear the name, I think of a mysterious place.
Well, it's not as mysterious as you might think, because quite a few places are open in Siberia to visit by foreign tourists. A thing that would surprise you about Siberia, though, is that eastern Siberia has more sunny days than Italy, and more sunny days than Florida, for instance. You get, in some regions, very cold weather in the winter, with the sun shining most of the time. Geographically, I would say that most of Siberia is very similar to the northern parts of Canada, endless stretches of forest land. Siberia is extremely rich in mineral deposits, and they say that you'll find every single element in the Mendeleev table. Today, Siberia is our third biggest metallurgical base. It has huge hydropower stations. Among Among them are such giants as the Grot and the Krasnoyarsk power plants, which are the biggest in the world. Although some people might think that Siberia is a place somewhere out in the sticks, actually it is not. Because you'll find cities there with a population of 1.25 million, such as, say, Novosibirsk, which is noted as a science center with one of the biggest departments of the Academy of Sciences out there, with thousands of scientists conducting research in the most advanced fields of human knowledge. You'll find Siberia producing a lot of industrial plants. Siberia is one of our biggest breadbaskets, with an enormous amount of land that was put under the plow in recent years. Coming back to Novosibirsk, its biggest city, I'd like to say that it has an opera house, it has a concert hall, a drama theater, there are buses running there, it even has a children's theater. And this is typical not only of Novosibirsk, but of other cities too. For instance, the city of Omsk has a population of something like 750,000. Then there is Irkutsk with a population of something like 400,000. Or Barnaul with 350,000. And my colleague here, sitting right next to me, was born in Tomsk, a city with almost 300,000 people. And there are at least a dozen cities in Siberia of this size. Industrial cities that look very much like any city in the European part of the Soviet Union.